This, my friends, is the AirStep TX. Now, I have done a video on this. I did a video explaining in detail everything it can do, but since then, it's been updated and some changes have been made. In this video, we're going to have a look at the updates. We're going to compare it to what it was in the first place. We'll have a look at that as well, if you haven't seen that video. And you know what? I still think there's a way to go to make this as good as it could be. So at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about the things that I think Exonic still need to do to make this a really good product. So let's get into it. So why is this update important? Well, you know what? I left it on my board for a while after I did the video, but then I had a bit of a catastrophe, and I can't have been the first one that this has happened to. Normally when I set a pedal board up, I'll start with clean and go all the way through the lead. So that's a sort of crunchy one, that's a big crunchy one, and that's a screaming lead. So what happened to me was, I was playing for clean sound, then I went to a solo, and then I wanted to go back but be a crunchy sound, this one here. So that's what I did. I hit that pedal and started singing. And I heard from my guitar, instead of that nice bright crisp crunch sound, I heard just a nothingness little plink. You know when you plug your guitar straight into a power amp or into your interface and you get that clinky plinky thing that hasn't got any amplifiers on it? That's what I got. And you know why? Because that button there, if you hold it down too long, turns your amplifier off. Yep. It turns your amplifier off. Now, I can't be the only one that's run into an absolute disaster with that, because they've taken it away in the update, and that's one of the things that they've changed. But that was an absolute nightmare. So really, for AirStep to update that, thank the Lord. There's still a way to go, and there's still some things in this that could be a lot better, and we'll get to them at the end of the video. But for now, let's have a quick look at how it actually goes together with your TONEX. In case you haven't seen the first video, or you haven't seen anything about this, go through the basics. So setting it up with your TONEX is really easy. You take a little USB lead out of the bottom of your TONEX, and you plug it into the back of the AirStep, and that's it. And did you notice there's no power supply attached to the AirStep? Handy little feature that, it's got a battery that'll run itself and the TONEX ONE for quite a while. You can plug it in and run them both off the charge, but it will run it from battery as well. That's got its uses. So let's have a look at what these buttons do. Now this is what they did originally. You can still switch between this setup and the new setup, but this is what the original setup did. Buttons 1 to 4 on a short press give you presets 1 to 4 on your TONEX ONE. So far so good, dead easy, we like that. Then if you press these two together, you go down a preset. If you press the next two together, you go up a preset. These two, you go down a bank of 4, and then these two together, you go up a bank of 4. Again, so far so good. The next bit is not so good, because all of these buttons activate on the release, which means you press it, nothing happens until you lift your foot off. So you can do a short press, which means you go press and release it quickly, or you can do a long press, you hold it, and then something happens after a pause. So normally your short press is okay, but you've got to be aware that actually it'll change your sound on the release. The longer press does other things. These are the things that the long press does. On the first button, it turns your compression on and off. On the second button, it turns your amp on and off. Can you see the problem? It turns your amp on and off. The third one does your modulation, delay and reverb. Not so bad, but that second one, if you hold your foot on that second button too long, it turns your amp off. In the middle of a gig, when you're playing, you can turn your amp off. Just by holding that button down a little bit too long, when you know that to get it to release and change in time, you've got to do it on the release. That's a problem. And that's what happened to me. Now, if you've got one of these AirSteps and that's happened to you, put it below in the comments. If you think it's a stupid idea, say so in the comments. If for some bizarre reason you think it's a great idea to turn your amp off in the middle of a gig, I'd love to know, and I'd love to hear from you as to why you think that's a good idea. You know, it's possible that you might want a sound that hasn't got an amp on it, but wouldn't you just set up a preset specifically for that? Wouldn't you? Because you want your delays, your reverbs and things like that, and especially your compression, to compensate for that. You might want that acoustic-y kind of ishness, but, you know, no. Comment, please. Now, when you press this button, you go into effects mode. So far, so good. However, effects mode is not without its problems either. Look at this. The first button is your compression. Okay, you can turn your compression on and off. The second button again is your amp, to turn your amp on and off. The third one turns your modulation effect on and off. Now that might not seem too bad at first, but again, that's fraught with problems. I'll come back to that. And the third one is your tap tempo. Okay, tap tempo, that's useful. Now, when you look at the long press that you can do in effects mode, then we get into more interesting territory. The first one, the long press, is a gate, to turn your gate on and off. Don't know why you'd want to do that. Then the next one turns your cab on and off. Again, why would you want to turn your cab on and off ever? Why would you want to do that? Then the third one, remember this is a long press, scrolls you down the list of modulations. So not only have you got to remember what order in your Tonex the modulation effects are in, you've got to scroll down on a long press to go between them after you've turned your modulation on. In the middle of a song. Are you really going to do that? That's just madness. Absolute madness. So, to turn your flanger on, I think flanger is the third or fourth effect. You've got to go into effects mode. Then you've got a long press modulation type. 3-4 times. And then a short press to turn it on. You're going to be halfway through your next song before you've done that, aren't you? So, no, that's not good. Now, when I made that first video, which was sponsored, this one isn't, and you can probably tell, they did get back to me and say that their experts had decided that that was the best way to do it. Their experts had designed it like that. Really? What were these guys experts in? Answers below, and you don't have to keep it serious. Now let's have a look at what they've made better, and they've made it better. So the first part of it, the basic presses, that remains the same. There was nothing wrong with that. Then what they've done on that first section, before you go into the effects block, they've changed a couple of things. So the first button, still on the long press, does compression. The second button does your modulation. The third button will turn your delay on and off. And the fourth button will turn your reverb on and off. Do you see what they've done? You can't turn the amp off anymore. Hooray! That is much, much better. Now the next improvements are in the effects section. I'll come on in a second to the things I still think need to be improved, but we've got strides forward here as well. Let's have a look. So we start off with button 1 is your compressor on and off. Then your second button is your modulation on and off. Then your delay on and off, and your reverb on and off, and the last one is your tap tempo. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't turn the cab off in there either, can you? That's a big step forward. Then on the long presses, your first long press is your gate. Your second long press is still your modulation type. Now there's still room for improvement there, but we'll leave it, we'll carry on. Then your delay type. And then your reverb type. We'll discuss them in a minute, but can you still see what I'm saying? You can't turn your amp or your cab off at all. Yes, big improvements, well done, much better. Can't turn your cab off, can't turn your amp off. That's a huge safety net compared to what we had before. Now, let's talk about this delay and reverb thing. What's the likelihood, and tell me in the comments, because what's the likelihood you're going to want to change your delay type? Bearing in mind the types are very limited and you're not going to be able to change anything within them. Why would you need to do that on the fly on a pedal board in a gig? And the same goes for the reverb as well. There's not many types of reverb. You're probably going to want to set them in your preset. So if you're going to change your reverb and your delay types, the likelihood is that you'll want to change other parameters within that, and you'll probably more than likely, in fact almost definitely, you'll bake them in to a different preset, won't you? So the chances of needing to change them, I really don't see it. As far as modulation goes, it's very likely that you'll want to have more than one modulation type available to you. So how about this, Exonic? How about you give us the choice, like you've got the old version and the new version, how about we have another third way, if you like, whereby we can choose whether we want to have our effect block be just the modulations or a selection of the other things like the reverbs and delays, etc. For instance, we press that button, it takes us into our effects, and that one can be chorus, that one can be flanger, that one can be tremolo, or whatever it is. And you can just plop them through like that, then press any two together and it takes us back out of that mode. That might be a better way, or at least give us the choice. And here's the other thing that I think could be better. Instead of having to go into the effects mode to change your tap tempo, how about we just put it on any of the other buttons? So look, if you press that button at the beginning of your song, that button doesn't do anything anymore on a short press, does it? You press it again on a short press, nothing else happens. So how about this? How about you make the second, third and fourth presses of any button your tap tempo. So if I'm going to go and start my song on that sound there, I can go 1, 2, 3, and I've tap tempoed and selected that sound. That would seem like a much more effective way and efficient way to use the buttons, which means also that when you go into your effects mode, you've still got another button that you can do something with. Comment if you think that's a good idea, because I think a lot of companies could do that and it would make a lot of things a little bit easier to use. Now, being that this is not a sponsored video, would I recommend that you spend your hard-earned cash on an AirStep TX? Well, not until you've seen my other video on the AirStep Multi, which is programmable. The AirStep Multi is every AirStep that they make in one little box with loads of connectivity on the back, and it's programmable. So you can choose exactly what you want those buttons to do with your TONEX. Links on the screen to the review of the AirStep Multi, and at some point I'll do a link and a video about the two of them and a comparison between them. But in the meantime, don't forget, like, subscribe, follow the channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of these videos.